Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Liz with Premier Yarns. I want to say thank you to Michaels for hosting this class, and thank you to all of you for joining me on this Saturday. If you want to pop in the chat where you're joining from and just say hello, that'd be cool. I am in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's a nice sunny day again. So yeah, you should have the list of materials and the complete written pattern where you can print that out and work along with me. And let me just click this before I go to the, hold on, got it. The overhand view, I'm just gonna go over a couple things. So today's class is Amigurumi, and the one I have today is the Koala. That's this guy. It's kind of a set, so I don't know, like maybe a series you could call it. Last time, 2 weeks ago, I did the bunny. And then before that, I did the fox. This is the fox. And then first I did the chick. So if you were with me for any of those, thank you for joining me again. But if not, you can watch all of the replays of those over on the Michael's YouTube channel. So check those out. A lot of it is similar, like the base is sort of like the same exact pattern. And then you just add different, parts like ears and things like that. You can do what I'm probably going to do today because we're using the chenille yarn for these. And that's this one. But what I'm probably going to do is show you some of the basics on a smoother worsted weight yarn, which is this Craft Smart Value. If you want to do the whole thing in the Craft Smart Value, you can totally do that. And then you would come out with like a smaller guy like this. Okay, you just use a smaller hook. But the reason I want to do that is because sometimes it's difficult to see the stitches with the chenille yarn because it's got a lot of texture to it and it kind of hides the stitches. So let's switch over to the overhand and I can go over the rest of the materials. Okay, later. So if I give you a little bit more of a close-up on this chenille yarn, this is the one I used for the koala. It is ash. And then I used this white one for some of the details. But if you look closely at this, you can see it's got, the way they make it is they have a like a thin thread, and then they put all this little fuzzy around it. So what happens is, hi, oh, somebody said I'm 9 years old and this is my first time. Welcome, thank you so much for joining. It's a good time to learn. A lot of people I've heard say they learned at age 9 or 10, so it's perfect for you. Okay, so if I go like this, a lot of this fuzz will just kind of fall off, see? And then it's wrapped around that thread. So it can be a little bit tricky. If it's your very, very first time, I recommend starting with the smooth worsted weight yarn like this. Nothing's going to fall off. It's easy to see, and it's easy to see your stitches, okay? So went over the colors. Oh, I did the nose with the black too. So we have 3 colors. If you want to use your worsted weight Craft Smart, you can use any colors you want. I'm using a 6.5 millimeter hook with the thicker yarn and a 5.5 millimeter or a 5 millimeter hook with the thinner yarn. So you don't have to adjust the pattern in any way. The pattern will stay completely the same no matter what yarn you use. The only thing you want to remember is to adjust your hook size. So if you're using a thicker yarn, you want to use a bigger hook, but not as much as the yarn recommends. So if the yarn recommends an 8 for this one. For amigurumi, you always want to go down a little bit smaller in your hook size because you want your stitches to be tighter and closer together, okay? So whatever yarn you choose, go down about 2 hook sizes from what's recommended on the yarn. Eula says, hello from Utah. Hello, hello. Yeah, so with this one, I could probably even go down to, this one says 5.5. I could go down to a 4.5 with this one, okay? But just for the purposes of the class, I'm going to use a 5.5 millimeter so it doesn't get too tight. I need a few stitch markers. Those are very important when you're working in the round. I'm going to use some of these pins just to mark where I want to place my details, like the ears and the nose, and my scissors. And then I also need some of this stuffing. And this is the loops and thread. It's just like the regular Fiberfill that you would get. Okay, so I think that's everything we're using. And I'm going to go over it with both of the yarns too, just so you can get an idea of the difference between the smooth worsted weight yarn and the bulkier chenille yarn. Because amigurumi is really, really popular in chenille yarn. So everybody wants to use the chenille. Oops. Am I still on? Okay. I clicked something. I think I'm still good though, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. I hit something and moved it around. Okay. Yeah, so you can totally use the chenille yarn. There's just a few things that you need to consider when you're using it. Okay. So let's start out with our very first beginning of the pattern, which is the magic ring. So I'm going to refer right to my pattern. I'm going to start right here. We're starting with our main color, which, like I said, you use whatever you want. I'm using this one for the purpose of the class because it's going to be easiest for you to see. This is the magic ring, which we're going to start with. This is where people get tripped up a lot. So I'm going to go over it a couple times, okay? So to make a magic ring, you're going to take the tail end of your yarn. And you're going to wrap, like lay it over your palm like this. And then you're going to put it around those 3 fingers. So around and then back up the palm. So you want to like cross it over like this. So hold it with this, with your thumb, put it around these 3 fingers, cross it over, and then rotate your hand so that this is the end that's attached to the yarn. I'm just going to grab that to hold it. Okay, and this is the position you want to be in. It's crossed over here, and it's like this. I'm going to show you a couple times. You can do it with 2 fingers too, like this. Cross it over and hold it like that with your pinky. Either one works. Just make sure that you cross the yarn that's attached to the ball over the tail, like that. Okay, and now you have it in this position. You want to go under this first strand and hook this next strand. So I'm going to take my hook, place it under the first strand, and catch that next strand with my hook, okay? And then pull it underneath. And then I want to rotate my hook so it's facing up. And then I've made a little loop on the hook. And then I can grab this strand that I'm holding with my pinky, which is the tail, and pull it through that loop. And then I can let go and I have my magic ring and I have a chain 1 on my magic ring. So let me show you again. Over the palm. And if you guys have any questions, let me know in the chat. I'll try to keep up with that. Hi from Arizona, Atlanta, Louisville here too. Angela says, hi, Angela. Okay, so over the palm, around my 3 fingers, cross it over, rotate, and then I'm just going to grab that with my pinky to hold it. And then I'm going to go underneath the first strand, over the next strand to hook it, pull it through, and then rotate my hook so it's facing upwards like this, and I've made a little loop. And then I can grab that strand that I'm holding with my pinky, catch it, and pull it through the loop. Sometimes there you go. Get it through the loop, okay? So that's how it is with the worsted yarn. Let me show you just so we're good here. I'm going to show you it with the chenille yarn. It's the same exact thing, just so you know like how that sort of texture will affect things. So place it over my palm, wrap it around those 3 fingers, cross it over, rotate, catch it with my pinky. And with my larger hook, I'm going to go under and over this one to catch it, pull it through the bottom. Remember, you got to rotate your hook upwards so you make that loop, and then you can make a chain essentially and pull the chain and through the loop. So you've made a chain, okay? That's it. Are we good on the, oh, I think we're good on the magic ring. You guys are awesome. Okay. Let's make a few stitches into our magic ring. So you can see how we do the single crochet. So I'm going to do, according to my pattern, I need 6 single crochets into that ring. So directly into this ring here, I'm just going to insert, yarn over, pull up a loop. I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over again and pull through those 2 loops. And that is my first single crochet. One more ring, please. Okay, one more time. I did that one really fast. So over the palm. So I'm putting it like around my like I'm starting with the palm and then I'm putting it around the like the tops of my fingers. Pull it back around, cross it over. See, this is the tail end here. I've crossed over the tail end with the working yarn, and then rotate my hand, grab that working yarn with my pinky, and then I can go under the first strand, hook the second strand, pull it through, rotate it so you make a little loop on there, and then see the working yarn is being held in my pinky. I'm just going to hook a piece of that working yarn and pull it through that little loop that I made. That's my chain 1. You always make a chain 1 before your single crochet. So that's my chain 1. And now I can continue with my single crochets. So insert into the ring, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over, pull through both of those loops, and that's my first single crochet. So if you can get the magic ring and the single crochet, you can pretty much do everything in this pattern, because most of the pieces start with a magic ring, and you just do single crochets all the way around. You don't have to do any doubles or any other stitches. It's all single crochets. The only other thing you need to know is the how to decrease, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so now I have my first single crochet. Remember, we need 6. So insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. That's 2. Insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through 2. And it doesn't matter if your ring is all loose like this, that's fine. We're going to tighten it after. So now I have 3 stitches so far, and you can tell because each one of these V's, you can see this is like a V, so there's like a loop and a loop, or a strand and a strand that kind of looks like a V. If it's right up this way, there's a V. There's a V, and there's a V. Each one of those is a single crochet or a stitch. So I have 3 and I need 6. So insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. That's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 for my last single crochet. So I put 6 single crochet into that magic ring that we made. And then all you have to do is take that little tail and pull it gently. And that will tighten up the ring. And at this point, you have 6 single crochet in the ring, but they are, as you can see, in a circle, right? So you've worked these, we're not working in rows like you would if you were doing like a blanket or whatever. We're working in rounds. So what we're going to do now is just work around and around and around and around till our piece expands. Okay, so I can go ahead and count after each round to make sure I have the correct amount of stitches. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's the 6th one. So you know you have 6 single crochets in that ring. There are also, you can work where you join, and you join with a slip stitch and chain up 1. But in Amigurumi, we usually work in continuous rounds. You don't join the rounds, and that makes it so you have a nice flat circle and you don't have any like sort of like a seam looking thing there. Okay, like you would if you were to join. So we're not going to join, we're just going to start around again, and we need to make sure that we mark this stitch, because if you don't, you're going to forget where your round started and ended. And I always put my marker in the last stitch of the round. You can put it in the first stitch, it doesn't matter. So just put the marker there. If you don't have a marker, you can use a piece of yarn and just like a different color and put it in there. Okay, now it says for round 2, we want to do a 2 single crochet in each single crochet. So this is my first one. I'm going to insert my hook under both of the loops. That's 1 loop. That's 2 loops. See, I'm under both of those loops. Yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through those 2. Fuzzy yarn, please. Okay, I'll do it with the fuzzy yarn too. And then I have another, I want to work another stitch into that same stitch. So I'm increasing, I'm working 2 stitches into 1. So go under the same 2 loops, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, so you worked 2 single crochets into that one. Let's do that all around. Here's my next stitch. I'm going to go right under both loops of that stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through those 2 loops. You're going into that same spot. You're making another single crochet. Okay, here's my next stitch. Go under both of those loops, single crochet, and another single crochet in that same stitch. Here's the next one, single crochet, and another single crochet in the same stitch. Same thing here, 2 single crochets. And then this is my last stitch. I know that because it's marked. So you can just take that marker out and put 2 single crochets in that last stitch there. And don't forget to put your marker back in the last stitch that you worked. So now that was round 2. And now what you can see what I did is I increased so my circle is flat. If you continue to increase at the rate we're going to increase, like incrementally, you'll just make it will just keep expanding in a nice flat circle. So let me show you that with the fuzzy yarn, the chenille. Magic ring. Got my loop and I make my chain. See, you can see how it could get a little bit difficult because I want to show you what it looks like with to see your stitches. So single crochet, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I just want to show you what this looks like when you have a textured yarn. Pull the loop through. Pull the tail so it secures it and it whatever the opposite of it, it makes it like it takes the loop away, so you have no loop. It's solid there. Okay, so this is my last stitch, but can you see how much more difficult it is to see those 2 loops of your stitches? So see on this worsted weight, I can see very clearly there's a V, there's a V. I can see both loops of the stitch. This loop is the front loop and this loop is the back loop. And I can see that very clearly, so I know exactly where to go with my hook. But when you start working with a textured yarn, because it has so much fuzz around it, it's a little bit more difficult to see. So it's just a matter of practice and getting used to it, okay? So that's why I always recommend doing your first few projects with just like a nice, smooth, worsted weight yarn that's like a light colored, because black is equally difficult to see. So like a light colored, smooth worsted weight yarn to get started, just like the Craft Smart Value is probably the best. And then once you get used to working all those stitches, after you've done a few projects, you can transition to the chenille yarn. Okay, so here's my first stitch. I'm going under both of those loops. 1, 2. There's my next stitch. 1, 2. 1, 2. And it's probably it's easier to see. It's probably hard to see on camera even more. When you're doing it, you'll You'll get used to being able to see the stitches. And here's my last one. 2 stitches in that last stitch. Put your marker back right there. Okay, so that's rounds 1 and 2 with the chenille yarn, so you can see the difference. Okay, so now let's skip ahead a little bit. Does it go through both? Yes, so it goes, when you work any stitch, you are working through both loops of the V. So this is the front loop of the V, and this is the back loop of the V. When you work a stitch, unless the pattern says different, because sometimes it does, you're going to put your hook under both of those loops of the V. Okay, always under both, unless the pattern says otherwise. Okay. All right, I think we're good on questions. So what I want to do is skip ahead a little bit because I want to be able to show you like the ears and the nose and stuff before we run out of time. So what happens at this point is this kind of goes like incrementally. So you'll go single crochet in the next single crochet and then 2 single crochet in the next. And then you do that all the way around. Okay. So there's a little star. So it says, you know, from the star, repeat from the star. So you're just going to go single crochet, 2 increase. This is an increase, single crochet, increase, single crochet, increase. So I get to the end of the round. And then you're going to go single crochet in the next 2, increase, single crochet and 2, increase. And then the next round will be single crochet 3, increase, single crochet 3, like that. So it goes on and on, and it's obvious, you know, it's like an even sort of incremental way of increasing evenly. Okay, and then once you get to round 10, this is where I got to on this little sample piece. Round 10, we are at single crochet in the next 8 and then increase. So we're going to basically be doing this kind of throughout. So let me demonstrate that so you can see what it looks like once we've gotten a few more stitches worked around. So I have my last stitch marked, and for round 10 it says you want to single crochet in the next 8 and then 2 single crochet, which is the increase. So here's my next stitch right here. So I'm going to start right there. 1, and then in the next stitch 2, and then the next stitch 3, 4. See, I'm going under both of those strands or those loops. Oops. 5, 6, 7, and 8. So now I've worked according to the pattern 8 single crochets, and then you want to put 2 single crochets in the next single crochet. So here's the next one. I want to increase, which is 1, and into the same stitch, so the same spot where you just came out of, 2. So that's my increase. And then we do the same thing, repeat from star. So start again with your 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now increase again in the next stitch. So 1 and another single crochet in that same stitch. And I'm just going to do this all the way around so you can see what happens when we start expanding the circle. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then increase. And this is the same thing that you're going to do in the previous rounds. You're just going to do it with fewer stitches. So, you know, fewer stitches in between the increases. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and increase. So 2 in this stitch, 1 and 2. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then increase. So 2 stitches in here, 1, 2. Now I can see I'm approaching the end of the round. So I should do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now I have this last stitch here that's marked, right? And I just made 8 stitches. So I know I have my count right, because this is exactly where I ended, and I need to put my last increase right here where I have this stitch marked. So 1 and 2. If you get to a round where you're like, you're supposed to do 8 and then increase, and then you only have 6 left, you know that you did something wrong somewhere. So you have to count your stitches, make sure you have what the pattern says. And if you don't, you just have to pull that back and start over again. That's why the marker is so important, because if you just start pulling back, you're never going to know where the end of the round is. It's not going to be clear because all this looks the same, right? So if I say like, oh, I have 6 and then I increased when I was supposed to have 8 and then I increased, then you can just refer back to your pattern, and the pattern says, okay, at the end of this round, single crochet in the next 8, increase. At the end of this round, I should have 60 single crochet. That's what this says right here, 60. That's my ending stitch count, and it changes with each round, obviously, because we are increasing with each round. So you just want to count your stitches. If it's wrong, pull back to where the marker is, count that round. So then I would like pull back that whole round and then count until I get to the correct number. If you make a mistake, but if you count after each round, then you should be okay. How do we read round 3? Is round 3 single crochet, 2 single crochet, and alternate. So you're not alternating anything. So round 3, Angela, is going to be exactly what I just did with round 10, except instead of doing 8 and then doing 2 single crochets, 8 and then 2 single crochets, you are doing 1 single crochet and then an increase, which is 2 single crochets in 1 stitch. So 1 single crochet, increase, 1 single crochet, increase. When I say increase, that just means you work 2 stitches into 1, just like I showed you here. So what'll happen is, like I was saying, it's going to be like 1 single crochet, increase, 1 single crochet, increase, all the way around. It's not really alternating. It's just repeating those 2 steps. So the first step is you make a stitch, 1 stitch into 1 stitch. And the next step is you make 2 stitches into 1 stitch, AKA increase. And then you just repeat those 2 steps like that. Single crochet, increase, single crochet, increasing. And then when you get to the next round, single crochet, increase, single crochet, increase. And you repeat that like sort of block of instructions. And then you just continue that all the way around, right? Until you get to what we just did here, which is 8 single crochet and then increase. Sorry, I keep hitting my phone. Okay. Helen says, I hope that answered your question, Angela. Helen, I'm not sure why you can't hear anything. Check and see if something's on mute. I think everybody else can hear me. And oh, I think I missed Erin says, just double checking, will it be able to access the recording? Yes, and Chanel answered that. Okay, is it possible to see 2-second close up of the pattern? Yeah, so this is in your class materials, or however, this is, you know, the free pattern that comes with everything. This is where I'm working on right here is the body. So I'm calling it an increase, but right here where it says 2 single crochet in the next single crochet, that's my increase. And then there's your star. Every crochet pattern you'll see, it has a star, and then it just says repeat from star around. That's how that's basic, you know, like the basic pattern reading. Okay, so what's going to happen after round 10 is I'm going to do rounds 11 through 16, and that just says single crochet in each single crochet around. So you want to maybe mark something like 11, 12, like mark that you did all the rounds, and then you just work one single crochet into each stitch, no increases. So your stitch count will be 60 for these 3 rounds because you're not increasing or decreasing. So you work 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So you work 6 rounds even. What'll happen is, see how now I have a nice circle that's kind of expanding. Once I stop increasing, this circle is going to stop expanding and it's going to start curling up and it's going to form like a tube. Okay. Because if I don't increase anymore, it's not going to expand outward. It's just going to work its way up into a tube. And then once you get those few even rounds, you want to decrease that circle. You want to decrease that tube and close it so you have like a circle, not a circle, a sphere, right? So you start with a flat circle, you work up a little bit like in a tube, and then you decrease the top so you have like a sphere, okay? And that's what I have in this piece here. So we did the flat circle. That's all those rounds that we did. And then I did a few rounds even, 6 rounds where I didn't do any increasing or decreasing. And then I started decreasing to make this smaller. So I will have less stitches. So let me show you on this sample how to start decreasing. Okay, so let's say we've worked those 6 even rounds and I have kind of like a, it's like making it look like a basket maybe. And now it tells me I want to, so let's say we're on round 17, single crochet in the next 8 and then work an invisible decrease. So let me tell you what an invisible decrease is. Is it? Okay, just so somebody was asking for a close-up. So here's where I'm at right here, around 17, single crochet in the next 8, and then invisible decrease, repeat from star around. Here's my next stitch. So 1, I'm gonna lock this so I don't lose it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, I cut this one. Okay, so now I want to decrease. And what I want to do is make this stitch and this stitch into 1 stitch, or the next round 1 stitch, right? So before we put 2 to increase, we put 2 stitches in 1 stitch. And now we want to make 2 stitches into 1. So this is where the front loop and the back loop comes in too. So this is the front loop of my V. Show you what this. This is the front loop. This is the back loop of that V. Front, back. And then of the next stitch, front, back. We want to start in the front loops. So I'm going to insert my hook in the front loop only of the next stitch. And then before I yarn over, you want to insert again into the front loop of the stitch right beside it. So we're in the front loops of 2 like adjacent stitches. Okay. And now at this point is when you want to yarn over, and then you pull through both of those loops. And now I'm back to where my single crochet is. So 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2. And that is an invisible decrease. And it says it's called invisible because you really can't even tell. It just looks like a regular single crochet. You can't tell that I've made 2 stitches into 1. So let me show you again. I'm just going to pull that out. Okay, so I'm inserting under the front loop of the next stitch. So here's like the stitch that I worked, and then the next stitch, and then go directly into the front loop of the stitch right beside that one. Yarn over. When I yarn over and catch that yarn, when I pull through, I'm pulling through both of those loops. Okay, and now 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through both of those loops to complete the single crochet. Let's do that once more. Insert into the front loop of the next stitch, and then directly into the front loop of the stitch adjacent to it or right beside it. Yarn over, pull through both of those front loops, and then yarn over, pull through 2. And that's an invisible decrease. There is, if you crochet, you might see a single crochet 2 together, which is like a standard decrease, and that's slightly different. But this, for amigurumi, we usually use the invisible decrease because it is like invisible. So you can see here, I've made a bunch of decreases, but you can't even really tell where they are. So yeah, that's the one we use for amigurumi. So that's going to be the same for the next few rounds. You're going to do single crochet in 8. So if I were finishing this, 8 invisible decrease, single crochet in 8, invisible decrease, 8 invisible decrease, 8 invisible decrease, and then at the end it'll be the same. Like when I increased, I should end up with these last 2 stitches, and then I do the invisible decrease into both of those, okay, to make that 1 stitch. And then with each round, as you continue to do that each round, your stitch count will decrease. And then what happens is you'll get to a point. Let's see, where did I get on this round? Let me count this to see where I was. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So I have 18 single crochet in this round, which means I probably got to round 23. So I decreased until I have 18 single crochet. And then you want to stuff this guy. So get your stuffing, just put it right in there. And you can start stuffing it earlier too, so you don't have to like put it through this tiny hole. I just did that for like the class. You just want to stuff that. I want to show you how to close this hole. So your body is like a nice sphere. You just have like a little sphere. And then we'll move on to the nose and the ears. Oh, good. We're good on time too. You watch the video again. Just checking my chat, you guys, while I'm stuffing here. So I think we're all on the same page. You guys don't seem to have too many questions, so that's awesome. But if you do, go ahead and pop it in the chat and I'll do my best to answer. So this part, you kind of just stuff it. It can get like a little lumpy. So the Fiberfill comes with one of these sticks. You can sort of shove it around, move it around like that. It's like an art. You don't want to overstuff it, and you don't want to not stuff it enough. And you want to move it around to where it's like a nice sphere shape and it's not lumpy or whatever. So let's say we have it all stuffed or circle stuffed the way we want to. What I did was I accidentally cut this, so I don't have enough yarn to work around. So I'm just gonna add a new ball, but at this point you wouldn't add a new color. You would continue with this color. I only have to do that because I accidentally cut it, you guys. So disregard that I'm using a new yarn and just continue on with the yarn you were using, right? Okay, so let's close up this sphere. And we said we were on round 23. So for round 24, single crochet in the next single crochet and then invisible decrease. And it's a little different when you have it all stuffed. So I want to show you. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16, 17, 18. Okay. So I'm going to go into that next stitch. Remember, you don't have to add a new ball of yarn at this point. Okay, and I'm going to work a single crochet. So that's my first single crochet. And then invisible decrease. So 1 single crochet and then invisible decrease. So first loop or front loop of the first stitch, and then directly into the front loop of the next stitch. Yarn over, pull through both of those loops. Yarn over, pull through to complete the single crochet. And now the next single crochet is just a regular single crochet in this stitch. Yarn over, through, and now an invisible decrease. So first loop, or front loop, I should say, front loop of the first stitch, front loop of the stitch just beside it. Yarn over, pull through both of those loops. Yarn over, pull through to complete the single crochet. Next stitch, just a regular single crochet, and then a decrease again. So front loop, yarn over, pull through both of those loops, yarn over, pull through. And then a single crochet. And then a decrease. Single crochet. Decrease. Single crochet. And I should only have 2 more left here, right? So I probably screwed something up, but see, here's my stitch marker. And right now, all I should have to do is do 1 decrease, which will eat up 2 stitches, but I have 3 stitches left in the round. So that just lets me know like I did something wrong somewhere. So if that's the case, then you would pull back, and I probably started in the first stitch instead of starting in the next one. So let's just do my last invisible decrease, and then I'm just going to skip that one just for the class. But you see how you can tell if you've made a mistake. If you don't have the right number of stitches, that should be worked according to the pattern, right? If you have too few or too many, you know you did something wrong. So let's take this out. And now at this point, I should have 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then I have this 13th one here. So that's how I know I messed up when I put in the new yarn. But like I said, for this, I'm just gonna skip that. Okay, and now it says finish stuffing. If you have any more stuffing or movement or whatever you want to do at this point, do that now, because once we close it, you know, you can't get in there and start messing with the stuffing. And then it just says invisible decrease all the way around. So I want to get to where I only have 6 single crochets here. Let's put this back here. I'm just going to skip that one since I screwed it up, and then I'm going to do an invisible decrease. And then an invisible decrease. So we're just doing invisible decreases all the way around. And then invisible decrease. You see how it gets a little fussy when you're at the end here and you just have this little hole that you're working around. Here's my next 2 stitches. So invisible decrease. Invisible decrease. And there's my last 2, 1, 2, invisible decrease. And at this point, get that front loop. It's very fussy at the end when everything's tight. Okay, front loop, pull through the 2 front loops and complete the single crochet. At this point, I have 6 single crochets in this little circle, but as you can see, it's almost completely closed the hole. So then I would cut this yarn. Pull it up like this. So you pull it through that last loop. And then I'm just gonna, this is the one that I had before, but you won't have this strand. That was just because I had to change color. And then you're gonna take your tapestry needle. And we're just gonna close that hole with the tapestry needle. Oh, not this one, this one. So put it on my needle. That much. And then I'm just going to take, this is the one from the last stitch that I worked, and then I'm just going to go into the next stitch and pull it through. And then I'm going to go into like this stitch right here, and then into this stitch and pull it through. And then I'll do one more, pull it through. So you can see what happens when you pull this yarn through with the tapestry needle is when those little fuzzies like to fall off everywhere. So I only use the chenille yarn to close up the hole like this. Once we start adding the pieces, when we sew on the pieces, just use a worsted weight yarn to sew those on, because if not, every time you pull it through like this, it starts like shedding, and you don't want to shed. It doesn't shed at all when you're crocheting or knitting with it. It's perfectly fine. But once you start like pulling through on this piece like this, like doing anything in this sort of motion, the fuzzies fall off. So you can't like weave with it or whatever, but you can definitely crochet and knit with it. It's just the nature of the way this is. So once I have this hole closed up, what you can do is just take this last tail, right? Put it right through there, and then just come back out anywhere, it doesn't matter where. And now you've pulled that through and sealed it or concealed it. And then you just cut this. Shove that in so you can't see it. Okay, so now it's totally closed up. And this is where we started. And this is where we ended to make this sphere. So because where you start looks a little prettier than where you end, I tend to use this as the bottom and this as the top of the head. Okay, so now you just need to add some ears to it, add the little paws to it, and add the eyes to it. So let me show you how the ear or the nose is made next, because the nose is a little bit different. The paws are almost exactly like what we did here, but you work like a different number of stitches. But you start with a magic ring, you increase a little bit, then you work even a little bit, then you decrease a little bit, and that's it for the paws. For the ears and the nose, it's slightly different. So let me show you how to do that. Let's do the nose in this worsted weight black, okay? Because I want you to be able to see the stitches. Are there one by ones available? I'm not sure what that means. Okay, so let me hop on over to the nose, and the nose starts out with a chain of 7, which is a little kind of different than what we've been doing. So let me show you how to do that. With a chain, you have to have a slip knot. So this is a slip knot. You take the tail, you put it over, you put the tail over the working yarn, and this is how I do it. I just put my thumb and my index finger in there. I give it like a twist, and then I grab that tail and pull it on through. But if you know how to crochet, I'm sure you know how to do a slip knot. There's different ways to do it too. You don't have to do it my way. So there's my slip knot. There's my working yarn. And I just want to make a chain of 7. So yarn over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. See, I want to make the nose in the black, but I can see that it's kind of hard to see on camera. So just for the class, I'm going to make the nose easier to see yarn just so you guys can see what I'm doing, but you're going to do yours in black. So slip knot, chain 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now it says working in the back bumps of the chain. So we have to work in the back bumps, single crochet in the second chain from hook and in the next 4 chains. So here's the front of my chain. You can see it's just like the little V's. And then if you turn that over, you have these little sort of hills or bumps. See, there's a bump, there's a bump, there's a bump. We're going to work into those bumps. I always work into the bumps, whether the pattern says to or not, because it just makes it a cleaner finish. So this is the first bump, and this is the second bump. So it says go into the second chain from the hook and work a single crochet. And then in the next 4 chains. So here's 1. You're only going under that bump. You don't have to go under 2 loops. You just go under the 1. Here's the next bump. That's 2. Here's the next bump. That's 3. And here's the next bump, which makes 4. I have 1 chain left. So it says 2 single crochet in the last chain. This is the last chain, and I want to make 2 in here. So 1 and 2. And you don't have to, but at this point, I like to just put a marker here because I'm going to start working around like this. And I just kind of want to make sure this, like I know where the last stitch I worked is. And now it says rotate your work and working on the opposite side of the foundation chain, single crochet in the next 5 chains. Okay. So now here's the last one I worked right here. And now what we want to do is start working on the opposite side of that foundation chain. So because we worked into the back bumps, what we have left is what looks exactly like a regular single crochet. We have those V's left. Okay, that's where we started in the back bumps. So this right here is the very first chain. So I want to start right there because that's the first chain on the opposite side of the foundation chain. Single crochet in each of the next 5. Okay, so here's the first one. So I'm going under both loops. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. See, when you go on the opposite side of the foundation chain, as long as you started in those back bumps, it's really easy to go on the opposite side because it's like it presents itself like just like a regular single crochet. And then single crochet in the last chain. So this is the last chain right here. And then it says join to the beginning chain with a slip stitch. So that's the last one. And now you can see this is my first single crochet right here. So I can join to this one. And if you want to, you can mark your first stitch too. So it's easier to see when you come around. So I'm just gonna go under here. So insert, yarn over, pull through. And once you have the 2 loops on your hook, instead of yarning over and pulling through, you just pull through the loop on the hook. That's a slip stitch. So now you can see we have like sort of an oval, whereas before we were making circles. And now it says for round 2, we're going to chain up 1. So chain 1 and work 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So you have to kind of squish it in there, but work into that same stitch. 1 and 2. So I'm increasing right at the start. And then single crochet in the next 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then it says 2 single crochet in each of the next 3. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And I want to increase there. So 2 single crochets, 1, 2, 2 single crochets here, 1, 2, and 2 single crochets here, 1, 2. Single crochet in each of the next 4, so we're kind of turning the corner. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 single crochet in each of the next 2. So that's 2 in this one and 2 in this one. And then that's the last of the stitches. If you look right here, this thing right here, that looks like a stitch, but it's not. It's confusing. That's why markers help, because this does look like a stitch, but that's not. That's just where we chained up 1. Okay, so we're just going to kind of bypass that, and we're going to join to the first stitch, which is this one right here. So under, yarn over, pull through, and then pull through the loop on the hook to make a slip stitch. And now you can see what we did was we made like an oval instead of making just a regular circle. And the reason that it's an oval is because we increased along the outer edges. So we increased here, we increased here, we increased here, we increased here, and we worked even here and here. And that's how you make an oval. If I were to continue increasing in this manner, like incrementally, I would have just like an oval that expanded outward. If I stopped increasing, just like the circle, if I stopped increasing and made 1 single crochet in each of those, it would turn into a tube. Okay, so that's all I did for the nose. Of course, I did it in black with the chenille yarn, so that's why it's much bigger, but it's only those 2 rounds. And then I just sewed that nose right on there. Okay, so you would just sew it right on. Remember, when you're sewing these things on, sew it on with the worsted weight yarn. Don't try to sew it on with the chenille yarn. The worsted weight yarn, the smooth yarn will disappear in the stitches. You won't ever see it. But if you try to do it with the chenille, it's just going to like fuzz everywhere on you. And it's kind of annoying. So use the worsted weight yarn or use the smooth yarn to sew your pieces together. Let me show you the ears. We're almost out of time, but I want to show you the ears. So for the ears, I did the same thing that I did in the beginning with the magic ring, except, and I can show you that really quick because it's a little bit different. So we start with our magic ring, just like we did before. The body. For the ears, okay, and into the magic ring, we work 3 single crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. Now before, when we did a circle, we just worked around and around. For here, we want a half circle like this, so I need to turn my work so I don't end up with a circle. So here you have 3 single crochets. So at this point, you're going to chain up 1 and then turn. And now I'm going to work in the stitches this way to the right. So then I'm going to put 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. And then the next one, I'm going to put 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. And then in the last one, 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. And that's how you make a half circle instead of a regular circle. So now I should have 6, and then row 3, chain 1 and turn, right? So chain 1, turn the circle like that. And then 2 single crochet in the first stitch. So 1, 2, single crochet in the next stitch. This is all in the pattern, you guys. I know I'm going fast, but it's all in the pattern. I just want to show it to you so you have a visual of what we're doing. single crochet, I lost my place, but single crochet in the next 2 stitches, I think it was, and then 2 in the last stitch. So we're still increasing, but we're increasing in a way by turning your work and increasing your making a half circle like this instead of a full circle. Okay, and then you're going to continue doing that like I did here for the ears. You want to make 2 in the main color and 2 in the white. And then to finish this off, what you want to do is put these 2 guys together like this. Take your main color, and I want to attach these 2 together so it looks like this. So there's like an inner ear and an outer ear. So I'm going to insert my hook through. So we always work to the right. So insert my hook under both loops of the first inner ear, and then the first stitch of the inner ear, and then insert through both loops to like the corresponding stitch in the outer ear. So you're working through both thicknesses. And then just grab your yarn and pull that through like that. So you have that loop. And now you're going to go into the next stitch. So under both loops, and then under both loops to the corresponding one. They have the same amount of stitches, so they'll each have a corresponding one, of course. Pull through and pull through the loop on the hook to make a slip stitch. Insert under both loops of the next one. Yarn over, pull through, go through both thicknesses, pull through the loop on the hook to make a slip stitch. Insert, insert, pull through, slip stitch. So next stitch on the corresponding one, yarn over, pull through both thicknesses, pull through the loop on the hook to complete the slip stitch. So that's why you make 4 half circles, because we're attaching the inner ear to the outer ear with a slip stitch join. This is commonly called a slip stitch join. So we're just joining these 2 pieces into one. Okay, so now let me see what I said here. Around the entire perimeter, I said. So I want to go around the entire perimeter of this ear. So once I do all these stitches on the top, I want to go around the bottom too, so it looks nice and neat. You can just work over these strands. If you don't feel like weaving them in, just work over them, or you can stick them in here. Stick them on the inside like this. So those are hidden, and then you can work over them, so you don't have to worry about weaving all that in. Okay, now I'm going to go around the bottom. There's no stitches here. See, this is like the sides of the stitches, or like the row ends, we would call them. But that's fine. I'm just going to go in wherever I can. It doesn't really, you just kind of go in wherever your hook will let you and do the same exact thing. It's a little tricky because, like I said, we're going into row ends. We're not really going into stitches, but this is all going to be, once you sew it on, you're not going to see any of this. So just kind of find a space, try to make it as even as you can, go through both thicknesses and work those slip stitches just like you did. It's a little crooked, but if I were taking my time, I could make it nice and straight. Okay, and look, that's the end. So I went around the whole perimeter, and then I can just, and I even tidied up all those loose ends because I just stuck them in there. And then you would just have to weave in this last piece here. And then you take your little pins, and that's where you want to mark. So like I want my top of my ear here. And then the other part of my ear here. And make sure you have it marked nice and perfectly where you want it to be before you start sewing it on, because it tends to sew on crooked if you don't mark it first. So let's say I have exactly where I want it to be. I'm like, okay, this ear, no, I want it to be down a little more. I want it to be up a little more. So I would put my pins exactly where I want my ear and then pin that in, like pin it in place. And then if you have them both pinned in place and you like how it looks, you can start sewing it in. So just take, like I said, take like a yarn that's kind of the same color, as matchy as you can. But it's not really matter. It's not going to matter that much because this is going to get hidden. And then just sew this bottom part into here. And then do the same thing for the other ear. Do the same thing for the nose. Take your two little paws that you've made. I stuffed these, but I honestly don't really like how they look stuffed. I think they look better unstuffed. So you can stuff them lightly or don't stuff them at all. Figure out where you want your paws to be. Sew those on with the worsted weight yarn. And the only last thing I did was the eyes. And all I did there was I took this Craft Smart yarn. I made a magic ring. And I think I did 1 or 2 rounds, probably 2 rounds. So like the first 2 rounds that you do with the body. So 6 single crochet and then increase all the way around, make just a regular circle, leave a long tail and then sew that in. So that's it. There's no like trick to sewing this stuff in. I just sew it, boop, 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 you know, try to keep the strands to where you can't see them. And then whatever tails you have left over, you can just push them all the way through to the back like I did. So like, let's say, I'll just show you really quick because I don't want you guys to leave without me at least showing you how I did some of the sewing. So let's say we have our nose. And let's say I've already put my pins in place, so I know exactly where I want it to go. I haven't, but let's say you have. This is the tail end, just shove that in there. So you sew right over it, you'll never see it. Okay, so you're just gonna go into 1 stitch and then kind of grab wherever like that and pull it through. And then go back in, you can grab another strand, go back in this way. Go over another strand or go in, grab another strand, come up. Grab a strand. And I mean, this is just like basic sewing. There's probably even better ways to do this. So this is like my super basic sewing skills. But if you're better at it, by all means, use whatever method you want to sew these on. My main thing is don't try to sew it on with the chenille yarn because it makes a huge mess and it's not worth it. It breaks and stuff. Okay, so then there, you see, you can't even see any of those strands that I used to sew it on. So go all the way around. And then once you're finished going all the way around, like let's say I'm at the end here, I would just put this through the last stitch and come all the way out through the back and cut that off. And that's going to totally secure it. So that last strand kind of stays in. It gets in all that stuffing and stuff. And it's not going to go anywhere. Well, you guys, thank you for staying with me. Sorry I went over. I know I always tend to go over, but these projects have a lot of little details and I want to make sure you guys don't miss anything. But if it was too fast, please go ahead and watch the replay because you can watch that as many times as you want. You can also start with this one if you want to start with the little chick because he was probably the easiest. You can watch the replay of all of them. Use whatever yarn you want. If you really love the chenille, use the chenille. But if you're just starting out, go ahead and try with the worsted weight yarn and come back and see me. I do classes with Michaels about every 2 weeks, so check the schedule, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. You guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and thank you so much. Bye.